Being that all members are present, I would like to call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of December 1st, 2016. I will allow the team a few seconds to look at them
Again.
again. Subsequently, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved as noted. At this point in time, we are back to resume our conversations of priorities. And I would like to open it up to staff. I know the staff has had several meetings and has some updated documents. So staff, if you could just give us an update.
Sure. The documents that we just handed out to you are the updated funding priority sheet with the information from our last meeting inserted in there, with the only exception of the items in red, which I've just changed for changing the word outcomes to priorities, since they are actually more priorities than actual outcomes. So that's the first page. I would like to separate these two documents into two documents instead of one, so we'll do that. So the second one being the social service contracted service priority areas, and again, just changing the word outcome to priorities on that one. And then some more specific language on the assisting the NIAs with specific cleanups and partnering with Department of Neighborhood Relations was added as more specific after meeting with members of the committee. Yes?
Is it necessary that it be NIAs, or can we just say neighborhoods?
Our department works with only NIAs because we're CDBG funded,
Okay.
and those are the only ones that we can work with.
Understood.
I think this is great. I looked over some outcomes and reporting from the two contracted agencies, and I can see where the city is also paying for services that we're paying twice for some services. And so I really think this needs to be broken down like this. So has all this under here been adjusted to meet the priorities?
We replaced the priority of volunteer-based cleanup programs with the two items there. That's the only one that we replaced. The other things on the sheet were not related specifically to
Okay.
cleanups or anything of that nature.
So do we have any further questions in the committee with regards to those priorities? Corey, would it be possible for us to just give a basic overview? Just so that the people out that are watching and those of you that are here know what we have right in front of us. This is the same document that you have seen in the past that talks about outcomes, but rather than it being outcomes, it's just being aligned to priorities in the community. When you look at the quality, cost-effective social service nonprofits and network, nothing has changed. When you look at handle our vulnerable citizens with care, minimize criminalization, crime, turnover, everything is the same. And again, like Corey said, the only sentence that has changed is on priority number 2, partner with Department Relations for annual cleanup activities and efforts citywide. So that's pretty much it. I know that Corey read it before, but I just wanted to make sure that we highlight it again, just in case there's any questions. So, yes, Councilwoman Clear.
There's other things that the city contracts with, like the franchise fee and water share. Why is that not a grant? Why is that not in here?
Corey.
This discussion was mentioned, was either last year or the year before, and because it was a fee-based program and not an allocation, that's why it was separated at that time. That's what I was told.
Should it be? Is that a good idea?
I think it makes sense for it to be a contracted service.
Under these,
Yes, I do think.
because
it makes
we are
sense.
contracting out for it. So why, can we add those, or what do we do?
Do we already have a separate pool of funds that are specified for those programs, correct?
Those programs are funded from a different source, yes.
Okay. So it wouldn't be a change to the services that we have and the things that we have already approved?
It would just be going through this application RFP process for the person that administers those two programs.
Which I think they should.
Councilmember Jensen?
I believe they do now anyway, just so we have access to reporting. Correct me if
don't
I'm
think
wrong.
Not in our department. I don't know if they're reporting to finance. I believe they're in the audience.
The contracted services?
Contracted services, yes.
Right.
The water share and the
Franchise.
franchise fee, we don't receive reporting on in our division. I don't know if
Oh,
finance is.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else. That's because we administer those programs ourselves, I believe.
No, we don't.
No,
No.
we don't.
That's because we had talked last year about shifting a bunch of that stuff over to CRC. And I was told at that time that we administered those ourselves, and that's why they weren't handling that. So if that's true, then that's different information than I recall from last year.
CRC is
GR,
here.
would you care to come to the podium? Sure. Introduce yourself and
My
bring
name
us
is
some
G.R.
clarity.
Laughlin, Executive Director, CRC. As far as it goes, we contract directly with the city for the franchise fee. We do provide on a monthly basis to Nikki reports of what's being used up so far of the funds. And then as far as water share goes, water share is monies that come from donations from folks in the city. And then that fund that's just reported to us from the water department that there's this amount of money, and then we have a formula that we calculate. There's only 3 agencies that receive those funds. That's Salvation Army, Let's Help, and Doorstep.
But you guys are not given that money.
No, it's not our money at all.
Yeah.
No, all-
So the
Actually, if I might just
Yeah,
explain.
sure.
Water share is just, it's set aside in the water department.
Mm-hmm.
Those agencies have so much to use up each month. Then they contact via email the water department and saying, this particular individual gets this much money, et cetera. And so the money doesn't even leave the city. It just stays there until what agency says that that individual needs the help.
So to run this through a program that's designed to create long-term change in the community, to me, doesn't really make sense, because this is a very reactive program where someone is coming with a need, and it doesn't really matter how you try and rewrite this program, it's not going to create long-term change in that people are still going to continue to have this need in the community regardless of how we tweak it. So if you were to try and run it through this, I don't see that we would really gain anything, as opposed to we just want an organization to administer handing out money that we have in accounts here as cheaply as possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's sort of my understanding. Is that not
Correct.
correct?
Well, except it's fragmented. I mean, unless you want everything. I mean, you could say that but for all these other agencies too. It's need-based. I mean, Boys and Girls Club, they have a child that comes in is need-based. I mean, you could say that for the
And
other
that's
social services.
True, but they're trying to create long-term change in the community, whereas this is very reactive. I do agree that all of these funds are fragmented, and it would be lovely to have all of our support efforts and relief efforts in one umbrella at one agency, so people can go one place and get assistance, as opposed to running from agency to agency.
Well, no, I meant the contracted services are fragmented. We got some over here, we've got some over here, we've got some. I just think we need to pull all the contracted services in and let people, I mean, what if somebody else wanted to do it? I mean, when do they get that chance?
So my first question, this is great discussion. My question would be to staff at this point. How would this impact the workload that you already have if we were to have a conversation of adding to the contracted services process these 2 other areas that we're talking about?
I don't think that it would have much of an impact on our end, because they're already reporting to finance, it sounds like, and so then they would just report to us through this process.
We would probably continue to work the internal system with utilities that's in place.
So you guys would have to go get a bunch of information from finance about how much money is left every time they call and request that, which creates just a hand through for you all, essentially. Sandra, is the goal to pull them in so that our committee has oversight over them?
No, well, twofold. I think it's to get all the contracted services. If it's contracted services, it goes here. The second thing is to have the RFP process. So that also is opened up to that. So there's two reasons, not oversight necessarily.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that, I think, before we go any further, I think that brings us back to the conversation of the contracted services period, which is one of the main things that we wanted to have here. I would defer to the pleasure of the committee, because I know that this was a conversation that you were very interested in, us ensuring that we had the proper contracted services. We already have the funding amount that is going to be divided up between these agencies, but we were going to talk about each of the agencies and wanted to have a small understanding of why they were a contracted service. So if, I'll defer back to staff, so that if you could provide us a report with regards to the rationale of how we got to where we got to with each organization.
Well, Councilmember Clear was concerned that our language was a little vague, and staff agrees, it might be a little vague. So on Attractive, Well-Kept City, the volunteer-based cleanup programs was a very broad priority, and so we identified exactly what the city needs as a contracted service, and that's why we have those two items now underneath that. So that's where we're at.
So that I think what you're asking was we were going to take them down, right? They were going to come down from contracted to social services?
No.
What was your question then?
The question was, the item, the big item for today was a discussion of those priorities that we had for
Right.
each of those contract services organizations. So wanted to provide the opportunity for us to have an open conversation with staff and for the organizations that are here, just why we had these organizations chosen. Because I think that at one point in time, there was some concern of why did we have these organizations specifically allocated as contracted services rather than social services and RFP.
So if I can make sure that we're understanding what it is that you want us, staff, to give an overview of, it's more about the agencies that are in contracted
Correct.
services and what service they provide.
Correct.
Okay. So the packet of materials that I just gave to the two of you were materials that we went over with Councilmember Clear. We met with her earlier this morning. And I would refer back to the memo from last December 2015, where staff laid this case out once before and talked about the services that each provides. So CRC, obviously, the NET Center is kind of a unique service that we could talk at length about, and the benefit that provides not only to that part of Highcrest, but probably a wider circle of the community. Housing and Credit Counseling, they provide our homeownership counseling for our Topeka Opportunity to Own program. So we assist low-income home buyers with purchases of homes. And we contract with them for the ownership counseling, which includes a finance piece to get them ready to purchase a home if they're not, and then to manage those bills that come along with it after, as well as maintenance of a home and a property. Jayhawk Area Aging Agency coordinates with the senior centers in the community, and we've talked before about the fact that those senior centers and Jayhawk require a local match for some of the grant funding that they receive from other agencies. But then, of course, the senior centers, and again, we could talk at length about the work that Jayhawk does with the senior centers and the seniors in the community. KCSL, juvenile intake, obviously the police department is not equipped to handle minors when they come into contact with them, and so that one we feel strongly is a contracted service. Keep America Beautiful does provide cleanup in the community. Safe Streets, you have also in that packet of material that I gave you the memo that we presented to the committee last year about this particular group, the contracted services, and then you have the response from Chief Brown, looks like this one, and he talks about the service that's provided to TPD and the community needs in terms of safety. That one, yeah, you've got it. This one says Safe Streets funding remaining contracted services at the top. That was, and I did not print the email that it was attached to. It's not signed or but it came from Chief Brown. I'll attest to that. And then the YWCA Center for Safety and Empowerment, which we know is the battered women's shelter, and again, could talk at length about the service that's provided in the community through that program, and the fact that we don't have those resources. So,
Okay,
is that what you were looking for?
absolutely. Thank you very much, Sasha. Ms. Clear?
How'd you know? Is Safe Streets here? I saw you. Can I ask you a few questions?
Thank you, Christy. Can you identify yourself once you get to the podium? Thank you very much.
Sure. Good afternoon. Christy Pancras, Director of Safe Streets and Prevention Services at PARS.
Okay, so I have your outcomes, I guess your quarterly reports. It said, okay, so you reported 17 regular meetings and 25 regular meetings and 16 regular meetings. I guess I just need more details on what does that mean?
Basically, those are neighborhood watch meetings. A neighborhood watch can be a component of a neighborhood improvement association, a homeowners association, or a standalone group. These are meetings that we go to, provide information for. In some cases, we facilitate. We do some of the background logistics work for them, such as create flyers, phone trees, because communication is always a concern for neighborhoods, so we try to encourage different communication. So that's kind of the all-encompassing overall look of
Can
what
you
we
get
do.
name some groups? Because I go to a lot and I've never,
Yeah,
I've never s-
I was at historic North Topeka East with you.
Mm-hmm.
Briarwood,
so you had 60 meetings.
yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are they all neighborhood and who else? I mean,
They're throughout the county.
how do we get hold of you? How do we do that?
We work in the community. A lot of the people we send out information for, they're regular groups that have met for years and years and years, or were referred to by the police department to start a neighborhood watch. City refers people to us as well too. And what we do is we work with people who are interested. We help them go, okay, these are the boundaries at what your neighborhood watch should be. This is how often we recommend meeting. And we encourage leaders to step up within the community.
So how many neighborhood watch?
Are there?
Uh,
I would say within the county, there are about 100 that I would say are active, meaning they meet at least once a year.
And on the, what else is there? So do you partner with the city so they can also, like active neighborhood organizations?
We partner with anyone and everyone in order to make the community better. The city works a lot with NIAs, so we try to not be as involved unless there is a need for us to be, because we don't want to duplicate services. There's no sense in 4 of us being there for one agency, so we don't attend NIAs very often unless there is a need.
So how does this differ from the presentations? So you had,
Yeah, we go out into the community and give different presentations to groups such as Civic, Rotary, Civitan, Brewster Place, different retirement homes, different schools. We educate on different crime prevention aspects.
you know, I think what would be important to these reports is who, where, and when.
I would be glad to email you our spreadsheet too.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, be happy to.
That'd be great. And then it says, reduce crime behaviors through participation state. What's the coalition and its activities?
Safe Streets Coalition is probably about an 80-member group that meets once a month at the Great Overland Station, the first Wednesday of every month. Our goal is to educate people on what's going on in the community. We have speakers come in with crime-related topics, and then our goal is to have people spread that out into the community. City 4 is great at recording it, and it's rebroadcast several times throughout the month on City 4.
So this, our police department is not involved in doing any of this?
We work in conjunction with them.
So we contract with you and we hire the police department, but you're both doing the same thing?
We're not doing the same thing.
Okay,
There's-
so that's
there's
what I
a little
meant.
bit
Okay,
of
what's the difference?
Because it will take often, police officers don't have the time to spend logistics on setting up a neighborhood watch. They don't, it's not really a good use of their time to make copies of things. Sometimes there's a neighborhood issue going on that they can't solve. It's not a criminal matter, but maybe it's more mediation. So that's where
Like
we.
what? Can you give me an example?
My dog is barking repeatedly, and I don't want to write a ticket against him. We offer mediation service as well, too. So we try not to duplicate efforts. We try to be an extension of what they do so that they can get out and do law enforcement related.
Because at our NIAs, I mean, and I'm thinking Oakland NIA, the police officer does all that. And I didn't know about the mediation because I've always sent it to the police department, and they've handled that.
And they'll refer it to us often.
Okay, I'm going to find out what they referred that I gave them. Okay. If you can send me that spreadsheet, that'd be great.
I would be happy to.
But I think that's also something the city, I mean, I think that's, and not to make you prove it, but I think everybody's interested. Hey, this is what we, this is what we do.
Sure, we
More
are happy to.
details.
And we're also very good about getting information out into the community, especially this
Yes,
holiday
I've seen that.
season.
I've seen that on social media.
We are all over the place, and we try to do that on TV stations as well, too, with different interview opportunities.
I just want to make sure there's not a duplication of services with the police
I
department.
understand, and we're very, very conscious because they have the law enforcement power. We don't. Sometimes people are more apt to trust us as well, too, especially in the Latino community. We offer Latino services as well for Spanish speakers. So we do neighborhood watches that are geared towards people who are Spanish speaking.
And not to be disrespectful or anything, but I haven't heard anything about Safe Streets in my district. I mean, they don't say, oh, yeah, Safe Streets did this, or maybe at National Night Out, but that's the only time I hear your name come up.
Oh, I'm certainly sorry to hear that.
I know,
we've
and
been-
that's why I'm
We've
asking.
been over in the Oakland area quite a bit and work with TJ and Tara Nicholas in the historic North Topeka East, if I'm saying that right. We're starting to set 2 separate neighborhood watch groups up as an extension of that because there's some blocks that are seeing particular problems that we can work one-on-one with.
Okay.
I think you're skipping over one of the most important things you do, which is National Night Out. I mean, as a community, we have some of the largest National Night Out gatherings in the country
We're
in
ranked
terms
7th.
of, I mean, let's talk about the entire country and what you all are able to do in our community that is significantly smaller than other metropolitan areas around the U.S. That bringing together of different communities to try and build community pride and get people to know each other, I mean, you can't put a dollar figure on that. That is critical to the success of our future, and our police department certainly doesn't have time to coordinate all that. I mean, that's,
We start in January, actually.
yeah, I mean, and I'm frankly not surprised. So it's a big deal, and that's something that our police officers and our administrative staff just can't do.
Well, yeah, but there is a price tag on it, and we pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that is important that we know exactly what they do.
And I understand that. I just don't want you to discount, it's one line that says they work on National
No, I
Night Out.
mentioned that.
Yeah, but
I mentioned it.
that's a very important aspect of what they do.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you for all you guys do. Any other questions with regards to our priorities or the organizations that are currently listed as contracted services within the organization?
You mentioned that you wanted to separate, why?
So after meeting with Councilmember Clear and having a little better understanding, the social service and contracted service priority areas is maybe something we could have another meeting about to see on each of these if they need to be more specific, as we did with the neighborhood cleanups. So we're open to that and would be willing to do that. We do have the priority on the council agenda for January 2nd, 3rd. And so if we approve this document, which we pretty much already have from the last meeting, we can take this and present it as our priorities and continue to work on the areas that are of concern.
So we can stay on our calendar.
Stay on our schedule.
So I would make a motion.
And your
do
motion
so.
would be?
to accept this document, approve this document, use this as a working document until, I mean, does this have to be approved then later?
We can approve this later.
Would have to be finalized before we open the
For
application.
February,
Right, yeah.
and then use this as a working document
A
until
little bit before
February?
then, because we then have to
to
update
publish it,
EC
yeah.
impact
January.
and all that. So.
I'm okay with that. I think this is an excellent start. About the only thing I would add is I'd love to have a separate block, if you would, for the contracted services and talk about how that, it doesn't necessarily replace a city service or no, because it does, how if a contracted service is working the way that I think we're all intending it, it's cheaper for the city to hand those responsibilities off to another organization than it is for the city to execute it itself. But that it is the city's responsibility to make sure those services are carried out in the community. I think that would go a long way in explaining the difference between contracted services and social services. Even though I understand that they overlap in a lot of cases, but, we have to accomplish this as Topeka. So since no one else is doing it, it falls to the governing body, and then we're going to hand it off to somebody else because they can do it cheaper than we as the city could.
And I think that that would be handled more by the priorities, because if the priorities are listed, and the contractor services organizations are not able to pair, then they wouldn't be.
Well, and I'm not necessarily saying pull them out. I'm saying define contracted services essentially, and why those are considered contracted services and not just general social service. The priorities would remain the same because, I mean, we as a community all share the same priorities essentially, regardless of whether or not you're a social service or a contracted service. The mechanism for which those priorities are accomplished are slightly different given the situation that we're trying to fix, essentially, if that makes sense.
So is that what contracted means?
So on the bottom of the old page 2, so the priority area sheet, we have a little asterisk there. It says programs funded as essential to the city, contracted services. Do you want me to add some more verbiage there so it's more clear?
I think so, if you could. Again, we don't need to change much, other than I think if we further define that, it might help people understand the differences a little better.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, if you don't think it will. I'm not an English major, but since we have one in our midst.
So what I'm hearing is that for future groups of ECD, as they're going through this process, in order for us to expedite the process and thinking future, that we may not be the people sitting here making this decision, so it just would be helpful for somebody to understand what the criteria was to determine which these were.
Essentially, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the goal. So do I hear a second?
Yes. I mean, technically, that was yes.
So the
second.
motion that we have on board is that we will approve page 1 of the priorities that has the priorities and the funding amounts. And that, so let's approve that one. I think that that's an approval on its own. Is that your second?
Yes, though I'm happy to approve this as well, because again, the embellishment I'm asking for is really for future folks sitting in our positions, not necessarily.
So let's go with this document first, and then we'll talk about the second.
Okay.
If that's okay. So do we have approval for the priorities document for the year 2018? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And then the next item would be a request.
Do you need the committee for this? Is this something staff can do?
This is something that, after meeting today with Councilmember Clear and getting a better understanding of where she's coming from and agreeing, for the most part, this is something that we can work on and provide a rough draft like we did for today. And then you guys can have conversation to see if you want to change any of, or follow through with any of our
So
recommendations.
this would be a recommendation to reconvene prior to February as a committee
Probably right after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Would be best.
to make sure that we are all in agreement with the revamping of the priorities document.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody have consensus on that? I don't think that we need to vote on
Yeah,
that
no,
one.
I think that's excellent.
Because then what we would do is just schedule a next meeting, and that would take care
Yeah.
of this.
Okay, and just a reminder, the RFP goes out February 8th, I believe. So we would have, if we change, and we already have changed some priorities here, we would need to do that really early in January in order to get the EC impact updated for the RFP process, so, just so we know.
Okay.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Any other items before the committee?
That's all I have.
Any comments from the public? Okay. Being that there's no more items, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Cap.
Need a gavel.